Welcome everybody to the Revelator Show on 94.5 FM Blink Radio. Today we have a very special guest. The renowned author of the Legacy Code and Legacy Coach. It's a lot of L's for me today.
It's a lot of L's.
Armando Cruz. Please welcome him.
Hey! What's up, Jem? How are you, man? Thanks for having me.
Pretty good. So you had to fly in from New York on your Learjet at this point. Is that
Yeah,
true?
yeah. My arms are tired, right? Isn't that the joke? Just flew in from New York.
Absolutely. So before we get going, I haven't seen you in 2 years, you think?
Probably, yeah.
2
man.
years. Let me tell you something. The reason why I'm so excited to have Armando on the show today is the fact that this guy, just to show you the power of intent and the power of a message and digging deep into the heart. I met Armando a couple of years ago during the midst of a very difficult time in my life, and he took the time and spoke to me. And he has this gift to look into a person and see their deepest desires and their longing to express themselves. And he spoke to a chord that I didn't like to show anybody. And I kept telling him, I said, Armando, listen, man, all day, by the end of the day, I do my meetings like at 5, 6 o'clock. I'm exhausted. And he looks at me and he says, Jem, I don't think you're tired from being Jem for an hour. I think you're tired of being James for 23 hours.
Right.
So by the time you become Jem for an hour, you're already dead. And nobody had ever saw me that way and saw like this potential in me like that and wanted me to go back to my nickname, which to me was such a deep, personal, inner child moment that I was like, this guy is incredible. And he took the time to kind of coach me through that. And he could see that there was a lot of stuff inside that had been kind of stuffed for many years. And that was my first meeting with the famous Armando Cruz. And I'm so honored to have you here on the show.
That's right. No, yeah, I remember like the other day, and that's right. I didn't meet you as Jem. I met you as James.
Yeah.
And after that conversation, it was kind of like, wait, who's this Jem guy that you're talking about that really lights you up? And then you're like, well, yeah, the problem is, the problem isn't Jem. The problem is James. He's tiring out, that truth in you, which is.
Yeah.
Should we move this chair? Because I think it's.
Is that the one?
I think it is.
Oh, you got the salty pirate.
I got the.
Okay, cool.
Give me a second.
Affirmative action, folks.
All right, let's try this one.
So for people to get a visual perspective of who this guy really is, I'm going to have a friend sit right next to him to get perspective.
Yoda.
Yeah. That's if you want to know who Armando Cruz is, this is who this guy is. This is the kind of company he keeps because he speaks from the heart and he really digs deep into places that I wasn't even comfortable with. And you got me to a place to start dreaming again, And I think it's profound because in your book, The Legacy Code, that's what that's all about. So I want to talk a little bit about that right off the beginning.
Sure. What? Anything in particular?
No, I wanted you to guess.
Oh.
Why did you write the book? First off, everybody has like a spark.
Right.
You got hit by a car, something. Like, what was it for you?
So I did not get hit by a car,
Okay.
but so legacy is something I've always really thought about since I was young, and a lot of it has to do because of my father. Okay. My father and I have a great relationship, and he's still alive, and he's still one of my best friends. And I remember being a kid and consciously thinking and knowing and saying, wait, I'd like when I become a father, because I knew I wanted to have a family. But when I become a father, I'd like to be as good as my dad is. Like, I want to have the relationship that my dad has with me, with my kids. And
what was that relationship like? Explain that to people, because some people, their dad is that guy in the passing night.
Yeah. No, it was exact opposite, right? So one thing that I realized very quickly was, first of all, my father had his own construction company. He had his own company. And what that meant was he worked hard, but he also was able to be a part of all of the extracurricular activities. He was there at most of the practices, and I played everything. And
what sport did you play?
I played everything that was in season. So in high school, it ended up being the first 2 years was soccer, basketball, baseball.
Yeah.
And then when junior year came around, they brought in cross country and track, which was really my ticket.
Yeah.
You know, and then I did cross country, basketball, then track.
So the country part, that's interesting because your name, you call it the country cruise or
Cruise
country.
Right, cruise country, right. Which again, there's a derivative from cross country and this love of running in the mountains and this kind of cross country, unlike track, has a grit to it that it really represents hard work and overcoming struggle because everything is not manicured, everything is not just polished. You're going to go through the mountains, you're going to go through the rocks, the mud, and I feel that really always has spoken to the work ethic that my father taught me and my mom too. My mom works super hard, which in contrast, that also led me to know that, hey, I want to have my own business.
Yeah.
Because my father, we'd go to North Carolina to go train up in a running camp, and he could take off a week or two and come back, and he was fine.
Freedom.
Right. He had that freedom, and my mom had 2 weeks in the year. And in order to get them, she had to fight for them.
Wow.
And it was one of those things that I was like, I quickly realized I definitely don't want that.
So your parents, it sounds like they were very open with you.
Yeah.
And you got a clear picture of what life is like with certain choices. And you also said that being connected to nature, you got to see life isn't a Facebook photo.
Yeah.
Like, you got to be ready for the country. But you figured out ways to cruise through it. And watching your dad was a starter for you.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, my father taught me not just in what he said, but more in what he did, right? Like, I saw him, he'd get up, and he'd be finishing his workouts when we were getting up. Oh, and wow. I saw this growing up. And then, as I got older, it was like, he would knock on the door, hey, you want to join me?
Oh.
And it was, and my dad, I'm gonna liken it to the Chinese water torture. You know what that is? You know, the drop.
Yeah, the drop.
That's my dad, right?
Okay.
He doesn't come in and say, you have to do this. He comes in every day and he knocks. Hey, do you want to go for a run with me? What time is it? It's 4 a.m. No, I don't. Next day. Hey, do you want to come in for a run with me? What time is it? 4 a.m. No. You know, by the 20th day, you're like, fine, I'll go for a run with you. You know, or he'll change it up. Hey, you want to go to a race with me? And I was like, oh, wait, this is a little different. Okay, yeah, I'll go to a race. And then it sparks you up. And the next week it kind of lingers through, and then
the master enroller.
Yeah, but you know, it was a long-term play. You know, so
he was a marathon runner, and he already knew.
Yeah, no, he definitely was. He was a marathon runner, but the way he lived his life the way he lives his life is definitely like a marathon runner. In that persistence, taking one more step and taking one more step and one more step. You know, we used to joke that he was a like a rodent, because he could stay in the same place and just like grind, like on the wheels.
Yeah.
You know, and it was like, man, you're just so persistent that eventually you're like, all right, fine. What is it you want me to do? Let's go.
Yeah.
Without him ever saying that he wanted you to do that. It was just like he would break you down like the Chinese water torture. You know, in the most.
And obviously it worked, because I understand you're about to do a marathon. How far are you running?
Well, yeah. So it's at this point it's considered an ultra marathon, which is anything over a marathon. This will be my first 100 miler.
Wow.
In the mountains, right?
Oh my
The
gosh.
country part in Alabama. It's called it's one of the long trails. You know, you have the Appalachian Trail, the Pacific Coast Trail, these long trails.
Yeah.
This is one of them that are shorter. It's called the Pinhoti Trail. And it goes from, I believe it's Alabama to Georgia, where the Appalachian Trail starts. But the whole race isn't going through there. It's only a portion of that.
So you're going to be seeing ghosts from the Civil War?
Possibly.
Pioneers?
Who knows? Probably. I'll be seeing a lot of stuff, especially as the late hour of the nights come through. You know, I'm estimating it taking me 24 hours. So.
No kidding. Well, let me ask you this, because I've met some marathon runners on my travels, and they say that they get to this place consciousness-wise toward the end that they start to hallucinate and see things. Have you ever experienced that?
Yes. Never in a marathon. I've run a marathon, and when I've run a marathon, it's always been for time. So it's a different experience.
Okay.
It's a different experience than just kind of getting through it. This will be the longest thing that I've ever done.
Yeah.
And it'll be in a really unknown setting. So I presume there's going to be some hallucinations, and hopefully they're nice, because the pain is going to be up there for sure.
Oh my gosh. So how do you prepare for something like that? Is this like a McGregor fight, but with more effort?
You know what? The big part of this is going to be the mental component.
Okay.
Is mentally psyching yourself up that, number one, there's nothing that you can do that you're not going to not be in pain. Like, you have to be ready, like,
wow.
going into it saying, this is going to suck. It's going to hurt, which is kind of the point. I remember there was somebody had asked Muhammad Ali, like, how many, like, sit-ups do you do? And he goes, I don't know. I start counting when it starts to burn,
wow.
right? And so this idea that on the other side of that discomfort is where you really start finding out and peeling back the layers of you and getting to learn more about yourself. And that's really what this is. This is that epic journey of finding more about yourself. And
talk about that
clarity.
pain, because I don't think a lot of people have run 100 miles before.
No, it doesn't even have to be 100 miles. It's getting out. I call it the adventure mindset, right? And the adventure mindset really is about viewing life through the lens of possibility, viewing life through a curiosity of saying, hey, what's around that next corner? What could be? And adventure doesn't mean that you have to go and run 100 miles, but it could be like, how do you approach your day with that possibilities mindset, with that curiosity, so that all of a sudden now, instead of looking at a world where everything is so scarce, you're looking at, ooh, what could be? What am I capable of here? What can we create? And I feel like that's such a more an abundant place to come from, and it's a place I'd rather be than the exact opposite. These physical manifestations just help bring it to life even that much more. So, this is one, but I'll do, I'll go in for a weekend and just go run in the wilderness and sleep out there. I did one.
No kidding.
I was actually looking at a video. I have a video of one that I did that was all minimal, meaning I just took a sleeping bag.
Yeah.
And I slept out there, and I forgot what month it was, but I got assassinated by mosquitoes. Like, it was the first time that I almost called the ranger in the middle of the night, like at 2 a.m. I was just getting so eaten alive, and I was like, there's no way I'm going to traverse.
Your middle name's Zika now, huh?
Yeah. No, I've been bitten by enough mosquitoes that if I haven't gotten it then, I'm not going to get it.
Yeah.
I built up an immunity at this point. I've gotten bit by a lot of mosquitoes.
So you put yourself out there, literally in the fray.
Yeah.
To prepare for this thing. Talk about the pain. Like, how can you describe it to anybody that's maybe had a bruised knee or a twisted ankle? Like, how would you compare? What's the difference?
It's worse because it's a gnawingness that even when you stop, it still hurts. It's worse than a physical pain because it's kind of like, it's a pain that comes from the inside out, not an outside in. And the thing is that only you can know. Like, if you have a broken leg, you can rationalize it and say that. But you know that the pain is coming because your defenses are breaking down. It's a function of it's a function of will, whether you're willing to endure more of it, because you're not going to die from it.
Yeah.
It's just, are you willing to go through more of it? And at the end, the payoff is you finished, and all that you get from it is knowing that you said, yes, I was willing to go through it. You don't get that pat on the back because everybody sees you. You're running, you're walking, you're crawling, but it's not like you broke a leg. Like, if you broke a leg and you dragged yourself through, it's a lot more, a lot more sexy. Wow, this guy did it with the leg.
Yeah.
But everyone kind of experiences that in a silent way. It's just nobody says anything because you don't see anything. It's kind of like mental health, unfortunately.
Wow. You said mental health?
It's kind of like mental health, right? Because like, if you physically have a problem, it's easy for people to identify. But when you're not clear on what your problem is, and most people don't, all of a sudden the way you're reacting to things doesn't make sense. It's hard for people to see because you don't have a physical disability or
can't see it.
Yeah. So it's hard for people to say, oh yeah, or as opposed to saying, oh, you're making it up.
So that'd be a great time for you to go to a bar and meet a bunch of people.
No.
What's with this guy? Everybody cuts in front of you and you just overreact?
Yeah, overreacting guy.
That's so funny. When I exercise, that's what I've noticed. When I do yoga, when I exercise, sometimes something comes up, and it's not even like the physical aspect of it. It's just something comes up in my head, like a story, and I get hung up on it. I'm like, why am I thinking of this thing right now? And then I have to just kind of acknowledge. I have to stop the video or whatever I'm doing, process that for a second, and then move forward. Like, yeah, that was the past. Ow. So you're saying there's like stuff inside.
Look, I think first and foremost is you need to understand how you operate, right? You operate very different than I do and than like anyone else. And I think that was part of the conversation that we had the first time we spoke is you embracing that, because you were fighting so much to try to fit into the square peg in the round hole that it was exhausting at this point. And yes, is everyone going to understand you? No. But they weren't meant to, right? Those that get it. Those that don't won't ever get it.
Yeah.
Right. So at that point, are you really going to fight a fight that is either not even worth it or not even going to pay off in any way? As opposed to if you just live you and actually stay true to that, you're going to find yourself that you're going to be happier and you're actually going to be able to serve people much better, as opposed to that exhausted state or that person that is not really there. And you can tell, like when you meet someone, you can tell the person who's actually there, and not as a judgment against them, because you don't know what's going on. Like they may not have that clarity.
Yeah.
But you can tell when somebody is there present and you're meeting the person versus one of the many faces of that person.
So when you and I spoke, I think it was pretty raw right from the start.
Right.
And you seem to be able to handle that very, very well. You have this capacity of just complete acceptance and say, well, let's just start there then.
Right.
Which I think is pretty cool. So when you're working with, do you still work with clients? Because you wrote this book, which is a future New York Times bestseller. I'm declaring it right now. And then from that book, you're able to really reach out to a lot of people that say, hey, I get it. So back to the original conversation with your dad, the legacy part. That's a powerful word. I don't hear people talk about it much.
That was actually one of the things that I was thinking about when I wrote the book. I interviewed 111 different men. Just so my idea was, I had this idea of what I thought and what my experience of legacy was through my father, but I said, well, I don't want to skew it so much to make it so unrelatable. I need to understand what are other men thinking about, because I wrote it specifically for men. And it's funny because about, at least from what I've gathered, about the same amount of women have read it as men.
Really?
Yeah. And what I constantly get from the women is like, well, but everything you say in here works great for women. And I'm like, oh yeah, no, I understand that. These are principles. They should work for women.
Right.
The reason is I wrote it for men because a woman can look at that and say, oh, this would work for a woman. Some men could do that, but most men are like, nah, he's not talking to me.
Yeah.
Whereas for me, I felt like the person that I can create the most magic is really other men. And so I wanted to make sure there was no ambiguity to the fact that I was actually speaking to you. You know what I'm saying? Like, this is for you, the man.
Yeah.
Right? Not that it won't work for women, or not that women are less, or this is the person.
So the word legacy means something to men, but to women, not so much.
No, it does. But here's what I found when I was speaking to the men. I asked them, I said, do you ever think about legacy? Is that something you think about, and how do you think about it? What I found was the following: most of married men, or let me rephrase this, most men with children thought about legacy. Like what, and they thought about it, hey, what am I going to do for my kids so that when I'm gone, they have something either to remember me by or to take with them, right?
Okay, that's good.
The other people that tended to think about legacy on a more consistent basis were people with deeper faith. In this case, most of the men that I interviewed that were religious were Christians. I'm sure if I interviewed Muslims and so forth like that, they probably have something similar, right? Because the second that you're religious in some way, you believe in general that there's something greater than you. So now if you believe that there's something greater than you and the world doesn't just revolve around you, then legacy now becomes something to strive for, something that is possible because it's something that's greater than you. So I found that those men, those two different kind of specifics of men in their life, tended to think about legacy more, whereas like the single guys or even the younger guys that weren't married or anything like that, they really didn't think about it. Partly age is a thing, like if you're too young, in general you don't think about it as much because you have that invincibility, and part of legacy is understanding that this is finite, right? You're not going to be around forever. So how do you live? One of the things that I share is the life that you live is the legacy that you leave, right?
So it's a life. It's not necessarily a building.
Right. Well, that could be part of the way you're living your life, right? Is to create stuff.
But taking total ownership of all those things.
Right. It's the actions that you take on a day-to-day basis. What you say, what you do make up kind of like what you leave behind. They precede it, right? Because you can't create something, you can't do anything if you're not taking that action. You can sit down and think about it all you want.
Nailed it.
Right. But if you did nothing, there'd be nothing for you to leave for others. And I like this term. One of the guys that I interviewed was this, we'll call him an urban monk, who's dedicated his life to serving others. And one of the things that he said was, it's kind of like leaving something for others to discover. And most people think of it just as, oh, I'm giving this.
Yeah.
But I really like the distinction of leaving something for others to discover. Because to me, discovery, number one, excites me. I enjoy this idea of discovering something. But when you're given something versus when you're, discovery has a sense of work attached with it.
Yeah.
You're going to have to work for something. You're going to have to unravel, peel back layers, dig up stuff to discover something. Whereas something that's a gift is handed to you. And if you know anything about, if you've ever had the experience, anything that you've had to work for, you tend to appreciate a little bit more. And you tend to understand a little bit more because there was a process.
Gotcha. This gentleman wouldn't happen to have his name Omar, would it?
No.
Okay.
No, it's not.
That's a curious choice of words there. So let's go back to that inner beingness that you're talking about, that legacy. So when you really challenge yourself, Armando, running or walking or crawling 100 miles, you're touching deep at your core. And can you talk a little bit about what your experience is there? Like, what's there when you feel that pain internally? Like, what is it telling you? What is it trying to say? Do you not interpret it?
I would say that part of the beauty of it is the simplicity of it. There's not all this drama that life kind of, or we infuse into life. When you're at that point, it doesn't get more raw, because you know that there's very little things that has to happen for you to do it. You got to take one more step from the one before to advance.
Right.
If you have to at least get the minimum amount of food and nutrients and water so that you can sustain that and continue that forward, and that's pretty much it. Those 2 or 3 things, that's it. Anything else is when the drama starts coming in. You start thinking you're on mile 30 and you're like, holy cow, I got 70 more to go, and I'm dying right now. There's no way. How? What is that? That's the drama that you're bringing in. All you got to focus on is the next step, not the next 70 miles. Because if you just focus on the next step, it helps you get going. Now, granted, this is my first time. I've never done 100 miles. So
I want to see you after.
yeah, this may be a better... I've done difficult things. I've put myself in hard situations, but nothing like this. So I'm not preaching from a pedestal. I can tell you from my experience in the past. And mentally, what I have in my mind going into this is making it do a few things. Number one, go with the eyes of a child going out there, not a competitor. What does
that mean to you?
Children have a natural curiosity. Enjoy the beauty of nature. I get 100 miles of nature. I'm going to get a nature overdose, and I'm okay with it, right? I think that, or I don't think, I know from past experiences, when you kind of go deep into the competitive mode, you lose that. you have to lose that because it becomes somewhat robotic. You have to get it to a point where it's robotic because you want to be as efficient as possible. Whereas if I go in with the eyes of a child and it's like, wait, there's no hurry. Look at this. As I'm running, look at that. Oh, wow, look at that's beautiful. Oh, I can't see anything. I'm in the middle of the night. I'm tired. I've been going for 70, 80 miles. I've never experienced this. Wow, that's pretty awesome. Wow, I can see that one star. Out of all the sky, that's the only star I can see. That's pretty beautiful.
So I would love to transpose you 2,000 years ago into Egypt when they're building the pyramids and having you be that guy. Explain to everybody why it's great that they're going to have to build that pyramid for no money, bringing all those rocks.
That it's actually fascinating when you think about how we've changed as people over time. Most of these great feats, the person who envisioned it never got to see the end result, and they knew that they would never see it. Yet their vision was so strong, and I guess their communication of it was so clear that decades and decades of people after them continued that work and actually saw it through. Whereas today, if it doesn't happen by tomorrow, people are freaking out. Wow. And I feel like we've lost that patience, and I guess we've lost that cultivation of that vision and hear before we have to see it. And again, I'm not saying that we have to return. I mean, they had a lot of bad stuff back then. We have amazing technology today that allows us to do this. I mean, this is amazing. We get to have this conversation, and other people get to be a part of it. Whether it's on audio, on Facebook, on anything. And the truth is, it's mind-blowing the way what we can use. Now, the question is how can we leverage this to actually enhance our lives and not imprison it?
Enhance our lives and not imprison it. Which kind of ties into that word legacy again. Yeah. Because it's greater than ourselves. That's basically what you're tapping into here. Right. That's probably the core. Whereas it seems like this whole planet is full of everybody who's born yesterday.
Yeah.
I love working with millennials. They're fantastic.
Right. But they have a new way of, part of it is because, it's that nurture. The nature versus nurture. And the nurturing environment has left for instant gratification. And I think they have a skill set that we very much need. But I also see that, especially as a father of 3, it's concerning to me that I want to instill in my kids a certain level of work ethic and willingness to fail and not having an entitlement and saying, okay, look, if you want something, it doesn't have to come right away. And there's a lot of it has to do with each child. I have 3 kids. They're all 3 very different. And I'm talking about different on the entire spectrum. I have my son who's like he can his ability to learn is mind-blowing. Since he was 1, he was reading, and he has this fascination. If he wants to learn something, he reads about it, and he knows all these things. And whenever he decides to learn something, he immerses himself.
Wow.
Like anyone that meets him is like, wow, how do you know? Like he taught himself how to do the Rubik's Cube. He taught himself origami. He taught himself how to do like yo-yo. He does all these tricks. He has this mentality that you put in the work. And I think that this service is when we look at that, and it's easy to do as a parent because he makes it so easy. Like everything that society says, you're supposed to do, he makes it easy because I don't have to fight with him about school, about reading, about learning. He does it. He's way advanced. So that part I don't have to worry about it. But he's also a pleaser, which could get him in trouble, and he kind of gets overwhelmed because he's always trying to please other people. And it's kind of, his is going to be a completely different battle than you have my daughter, who could literally be the president of the United States. Like, she's a natural leader, but she knows how to get what she wants. And she doesn't love the learning part, but she has this way about figuring out what makes people tick and then
Hitting the button.
infiltrate, right, pushing the buttons.
Yeah.
And she knows the
She's
timing.
building walls already.
Yeah, she knows how, she thinks out of the box. It's not like, oh, this is how you're supposed to do it. Like my son is like, oh, this is how you're supposed to do it. That's how I'm going to do it. She's like, no, wait. I'm trying to get here, and I just found this trap door on the side. This is going to be a lot quicker. I'm going to do this. She would come up to you, and she knows, like when she wants something, she'll sneak up, and then she'll see in the mood that I'm in, and she'll come in, and I'll be like, hey, Amelie, what do you need? And depending on my tone, she could be like, nothing, I love you. And then she'll go away, and she'll come back like 20 minutes, 30 minutes later. She'll test the waters again. And then finally she strikes. Can I eat this? Or can I have this? She waits for the right moment, and she knows. She's like slowly softening you up. And I love that about her. But there's some things that frustrate me.
Yeah.
And I'd be doing her
incredible.
a disservice if I treated her like I do my son. You know what I'm saying? Like if I expected her to act the same way as him. So we try to amplify the good and how to use it for good.
Right.
How to use it for good, right? Because it could easily be pushed in the wrong direction. And teaching her the principles so that she can use those skills for good and to actually add value. And then my little one that's 4, he's my wild child. Like we always said, that when you can't find him, look up, because he's funny. Climbing. He's climbing, and I think he's going to be like the athlete. He's very physical. Both, like he loves hugs and he likes being physical, but he's also very physical. And the fact that he's the youngest one is like a tail behind his big brother, and he fights him, and he fights me. Like
no kidding.
He honestly believes he's stronger than me. And he's like, he protects me from mom. Like if I haven't shaved, no, Baba, you can't kiss mama until you shave your spikies, is what he says.
Spikies, that's awesome.
His spikies. And he'll test. No. And he'll push me away. He goes, go shave your spikies or you can't give mama kisses.
Wow.
Yeah.
So with these kids of yours, are you looking to help them develop in areas that you see that they could use? Because maybe they complement each other in different ways. Like, do you want your daughter to be a little bit more like your son? Or to have both of them be more physical? Like, where do you find your balance? That way you're not like crushing, like you say, what's good.
I think it's important as parents that we let their strengths shine, but equip them so that they're better prepared for as many situations as possible. So for them to become a specialist at 7 or 4 or 9 is kind of ridiculous. They have their whole life ahead of them.
No, not according to all the parents here in Key Biscayne.
Right. Well, I think it is. Like, this isn't going to determine anything they do for the rest of their life. In fact, even when the kids are in college, when most people don't do what they studied in college. And if you look at that, that's kind of sad, because it's a lot of money and a lot of time spent, and you never even work in that. So why did you invest that time? I think there's something to be said for learning, and I'm okay with that.
But you're talking more of an inner growth versus the knowledge acquisition.
Yeah, look, knowledge is something can be taught. I have no doubt about it. Like when in our business, whenever we're looking for employees, we have a minimum standard of education that we want, but I'm not like, that's just a minimum standard. I don't expect them to know everything. What I do want is good character. I want people that value other people. I want people that have a heart of service. I want people that when I'm not there, they're going to treat our clients like their family. I can't teach that. So either you have it or you don't. I want to, for my kids, it's important that they treat people with respect, that they love people, like that they express love, not that they have to give everyone a hug and a kiss, but that they treat them with love.
And how do you do that? Because there's a lot of parents that I've seen that they really struggle with getting their kids just to say thank you or please.
You know what? I think a lot has to do with we have to look in, right? So what are we as parents doing? Mm-hmm. And like I said, my parents, I mentioned the past, my father, and part because my father our relationship was so close because of all the things that we did together. And I wanted to speak directly to other men. So I drew from that experience. But my mom too. Like, both of my parents were not people that just said things. They were people of action. Like, they backed it up. Whatever they were saying, they were doing as well.
So there's alignment, you're saying?
Yeah, they were definitely aligned with it. And I feel that as parents, I talk to people all the time. It's like, oh, my kids refuse to exercise, or my kids refuse to eat vegetables. And I was like, okay. The parent is overweight.
Yeah.
And I'm like, when was the last time you exercised? When was the last time you ate vegetables? And they're like, oh, no, I don't like it. It's like, how are you going to expect the kid to do it?
So lead by example.
Yeah.
The legacy part again.
Yeah. Again, it's the breadcrumbs you leave for them to pick.
Yeah. Right? And that water torture works. That's what I've learned with my kids. When they're out I can't get them to go to the beach. There's a lot of things. But I've learned I want to acknowledge their inner power. And when they go and cry in the corner, I said, yeah, just stay right there. And when you're done, whenever you're ready, you come over here. So it's always, the conversation's always to be had. And eventually, like yesterday, my son wanted to go play with his friends. And I'm exercising, I'm trying to focus. And he's coming up, and I'm like calculating the time. And he's flipping out, and I'm like, really, man? We're flipping out? But eventually I got him I said, all right, 2 o'clock, you want another 30 minutes. Well, give me 30 push-ups. And he's just like, but I could have never gotten to do that last year. But this year, there's enough trust, that connection that you're talking about, that I have delivered on my word with him, that he realizes, okay, this guy's not, the tape that's playing in my head that I'm the victim and nobody loves me, crap. He believes enough, because he's seen it, that he does the 30 push-ups. And I'm looking at this kid. It is the worst push-ups I've ever seen. He's got tears in his face. He's flipping up and down like a caterpillar. But he's doing it.
Right.
He's doing it. And in the end, he does 30, and I didn't criticize any of his push-ups. He gets up. He says, all right, I did them. I said, all right, have fun. See you later. And he's like, oh, my God, it was that easy. And you know what he said to me? He said, thank you. I said, yeah, I was just trying to help you calm down and get chill, because you're out of control, man.
Good.
So that's
right. It's not about, and it's not. You didn't say, "Oh, as a punishment." It wasn't a punishment. It was a moment in reflection. It was a moment of, okay, wait, you're gonna have to work it. You're gonna work for this. My son read I think it's called The Way of the Warrior Kid or something like that, by this Navy SEAL. He wrote like this kid book, and it was a great book. It's about this kid that he just finished 4th grade, and he's going to go into 5th. I think that's what it is. So he's in the summer, and then he meets this uncle that's in the Navy SEALs, and then he teaches him about discipline. My son finished that book, and he was like, all right. And he starts writing down. And I woke up the next morning. I'm like, oh, what have you done today? And he's like, oh, I did 30 push-ups, I did 30 squats, I did 30 I did all these things. I never said a single thing, and he's been tracking it, and he's like, I don't want to miss a day. Like, he understood the concept of discipline, of the consistency of things. And granted, he's grown up seeing my wife and I work out. Like, we work out in the gym. We have in the garage. We work out at work in our studio. And so he knows that this is part of our life. We go out for runs, we go out for hikes. So he knows that being active is an important part. The fact that he did it on his own and then starts tracking it and focusing on the consistency, like, oh, I don't want to miss a day. So today's workout or exercise, I'm going to do this, 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 and this. And then he logs it for each day.
On his own.
On his own. That's what I want to teach, is that self-reliance, where it doesn't start that way, right? Like, as a parent, you do have to teach. Like, there's a point where you actually have to be the authority. Yeah. You're not their best friend. You have to be the authority. You have to guide them and lead them and tell them what to do, because, as humans, we go the path of least resistance. Not because we're lazy, or not because we don't want to do things. It's just, it's looking for efficiency. And our body, our brain wants to expend the least amount of energy. And what's going to be the least amount of energy? Path of least resistance.
Your daughter's a master of seeing that.
She is. Yeah. She is. She is the path. She is the master of that. And it is one thing. So let me share, because you brought that up, and it is probably the one that I have the most difficult time because I'm not like her.
She's clever.
Right. But when I get frustrated, one of the things that I have to consciously think, am I upset because I want her to do, like, am I upset because she's not doing something that I want, or because something that she needs? Like, in other words, I have to make the distinction. Is this about me, or is this really about her? And, you know, there are some things that it's kind of has to be, look, I need you to do it. But there are other things where I have to kind of say, okay, wait, why am I even instituting this in the first place? Is it really for me, or is it for her? And sometimes it is for her. Sometimes I find it is for me, and I'm like, all right, maybe
So
I need to approach this. Yeah, it's not easy, and it helps that my wife is there, and we can have that conversation, right? I understand that most homes in the world today, unfortunately, don't have the other person, and even the ones that do, don't have good communication. Hence the reason why most end up single-family homes.
Yeah.
You know, that's one of the reasons.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, that's one of the biggest contributors is poor communication. About everything. About everything. Finances is up there.
No pyramids out of that.
Right. No, it truly is. And again, it's something that I work on every single day. Something I struggle with. Stuff that my wife and I constantly butt heads. It's always, how am I communicating this so that she interprets it in the way that she needs to interpret it?
So I want to go back on that subject. Before we do, we got to do a station identification. So you're listening to Blink Radio 94.5 FM on the Revelator with special guest Armando Cruz, author of The Legacy Code and Legacy Coach. Welcome again. Refresh.
Refresh.
Yeah,
we're back.
We get to say that over and over again.
Cool.
So let's talk a little bit about that. So teamwork and communication.
Right.
Especially with couples. Boy, that's fun.
Yeah.
And then romance right afterwards.
Yeah.
It's like, I still remember your face from yesterday.
Look, I'm not going to sit here and say that everything is roses all the time. It isn't. In fact, and we're talking about in marriage, it won't. It's not supposed to. You're human. So we're going to have our good days and our bad days. And sometimes those days don't align. And some days you have a little bit more grace. But if you haven't slept well, you haven't eaten well, work has been crazy, and you come home and let's just say your spouse at this point is not in a good mood, and they kind of test you at that point, it's a good point you're gonna snap. I'm not saying it's the right thing, but understanding kind of the logistics of this. So preparing your environment is really important, internally and externally. If you have an issue, do you have a way of communicating that doesn't escalate it? The problem is that it never gets talked about, and then when it shows up is when you want to talk about it, which is not the time to talk about it, because there is not that line of communication.
When is there ever the right time to talk about it?
It needs to happen when you're not both in a bad place. Like, you need to kind of be proactive and say, wait, look, this has been happening. We need to have a way of communicating this so that we can step away for a second and actually be heard.
So being heard is one of the key pieces of communicating, you feel?
Yeah. I mean, when you don't feel heard, it's one of the biggest things that distances you,
yeah.
Right? Because as humans, we want to feel heard. We want to feel like we matter, like we're worth. And if you don't feel that from the person that you said I do to for the rest of your life, that's really crushing. I mean, it happens to my wife and I, and it's like every time it happens, it's like, crap. I have to do something. Like, I can't communicate it in this way anymore. That wasn't my intention, and I think if you guys both step away, you understand that wasn't the intention, but it still hurts. It still was the way it came out. And then you have to say, okay, well, how do I how do I communicate this in a way that makes you feel heard, makes you feel like, okay, yeah, but at the same time also lets you express yourself as well. And I think that's part of that ebb and flow of a healthy relationship, of anything, like even with friends, even, you know, you don't want friends that are yes men all the time. Like,
right.
you need that friend that to say, hey, you know what, I don't really agree with what you're doing, man. I don't really, I don't think this is you.
Because you're holding him or her high,
right?
Versus just letting them continue their crap.
Right. I mean, I had a friend the other day actually training for this 100-miler, and I've been sick, and I've been kind of pushing my body, and he's like, do you really think that this is a smart idea? Like, what you really need is rest. And I was like, oh yeah, but you know, I have this. And he's like, okay, look, I mean, you do what you want, but let's be honest. If we're gonna be honest about this, physiologically, this is what needs to happen. And I couldn't argue with it. I'm like, you're 100% right. And I said, well, look, these are my goals. Is there another, like, can I still achieve my goal with this and still give this? And so we kind of worked through something that was like, oh, you know what? Keep your heart rate at this, do this for recovery, so that you can still be in alignment with the goals that you want to create, but you're still creating the recovery that you need, right? But if not, I would have kept doing what I was going to do.
So being authentic, being honest, and then looking out for the best in each other, and you're saying, is to have that beautiful bridge that keeps getting more beautiful every day, like in Paris, of communication, of how you say things.
Let me rephrase that, because I think that is a false description, and here's why. Because when you say that, and I know what you're saying, when you say build that beautiful bridge, people associate that beautiful bridge with a bridge with no problems, with a bridge that is smooth sailing, that smells like roses and you're going to float across. That's not the bridge that you signed up for.
It's a marine military bridge.
Yes. It's all you need is a bridge to get you from point A to point B. If you want to decorate it, that's wonderful. But you need a way to bridge the gap. And
anything will do at that point.
Anything will do. A 2x4 that'll get you across. It's going to be a little shaky. And at the beginning, you start with a 2x4. You know, it's going to be wobbly, it's going to be shaky, but if you can make it to the other side, now, guess what? You're both on the other side. You can put another piece of wood on there, and you can start building a more stable bridge so that when rough times come, it can weather the storm. Right?
It goes back to that baby step you were talking about earlier.
Right.
Something, at least.
Right.
Have something to start with.
Right. Take one more step.
Pretty.
One more step, right?
One more step. So a marriage is like a marathon in some ways.
Yeah.
And you've got your best man saying, bro, are you sure about this? Do you need to sleep this one off?
Yeah. No, look, at the end of the day, I agree 100%. And I think that's why, one of the things why, like, to me, all these things really connect with me. My mindset, the things that really connect with me is that marathon and ultra marathon, like that long distance. But it ties so closely to marriage and relationships, and seeing it from that perspective. It was like, I've never been a sprinter. Why would I start in my marriage?
I've always been a sprinter. Always. I just got so bored.
Right.
But I've been marathoning it for the past couple of years, and sometimes I think I'm insane. So I think, I hallucinate and I see people in my life. I'm like, how the hell did you even get here? It's tough, but when I think what it comes down to is, like you said, that legacy. And for me, legacy is important.
Right.
For me and my kids, like, what am I leaving? What's the vibration? What's the dance that I'm leaving that I can pass away and say, hey, at least I got that party started.
Right.
That's what drives me, and to go through excruciating internal pain.
Right. Look, and I think of legacy as something that's actually, especially if you had, like, I talk about two types of legacy: personal legacy and impact legacy. And the differentiator is really, the personal legacy is with your nucleus of people, the people that matter most in your life, like your kids, your spouse, your inner circle of people. And what good is it to raise the tallest building but neglect your entire family? Like, my belief is those people are there in your life because they matter the most. But if you neglect them, You know, a good example in the book that I put was like Steve Jobs. And it's not, I never met him, I don't know him, but what I've seen of him and what has been written of him is, I mean, we've had the experience. You're holding an iPhone. I have an iPhone right here, right? We've been touched by his technology and the way he approached things as an innovation. But as a person, most people didn't like him. He was kind of a jerk to them. And it was later in life, towards his deathbed, where he really realizes, like, I had it all screwed up, you know? So what he did from like the iPhone and kind of Apple and all that will qualify as an impact legacy. It's had an
impact legacy.
Yeah, it's had an impact on society. That's awesome to do, but to me, not at the expense of a personal legacy. And I think the personal legacy is something more that lives. And especially with kids, most people think is, what can I leave my kids?
Yeah, a thing.
I think if you add an extra word in there, what can I leave in my kids?
Wow. Okay.
It lives on, right? Because now it's a seed that you're planting, nurturing, and it's something that's living, not something that's static. The book is static. I bet you if I read it 10 years from now, I want to change some things. I think the principles are going to be timeless, but I'd probably, you know, I mean, if reading it now, I'm like, oh, I wish I would have tweaked this, tweaked that. But I think that's why it's important to base things off principles, not on tools and techniques, because those will change. Those will evolve over time, right? So principles really don't change. They become that cornerstone that you can build stuff off on. And I think sometimes, or not sometimes, oftentimes, people spend too much time arguing about the tools and techniques when in 10 years they're going to be obsolete.
Just like politics.
Like everything. Politics, education. Like I don't know if by the time my kids are ready for college, if college will be a thing. Or it won't be the thing that we see it as right now. And in all honesty, I hope it's not.
Let's talk about that. So one of the things I wanted to talk about was stoking the fire. You know, with your book, you talk a lot about, you know, getting into that deeper path for people, right? And I like to call it stoking that fire inside. And you just led into that, which is within your kids, you're planting a seed. What can you leave in them, that fire that you see? You saw it in me when we met.
Right.
Like, you stoked that up. I almost wanted to break a window walking out and say, man, I wasted my life for 20 years. No, I was kidding. So I met a guy who played for the LA Galaxy. Okay. And I'm sitting there talking to him, and now he owns like a digital marketing. When people say digital marketing, I'm just like, oh, Jesus. Like, you're like the 500th guy that's got a digital marketing company. It's like, it's just like refuse. But he's like, I sold it to an investor, and now, and I'm thinking, and he's talking about this amazing sports program for kids to like, just like you're talking that inner legacy fire. He wants to build programs for kids because he's seeing his kids in soccer at the highest level. It's misery, and kids quit and they hate it, and he wants to get back to that fun and play. So I'm like, well, geez, you got to meet Armando Cruz because we got to bring that to the world. And then he says, I sold my company, and I'm expecting him to say, and I'm launching this program. No, the next thing he says is, and I'm getting a second bite at the apple. I've never heard anybody say that phrase, a second bite at the apple. And I'm like, why would you do that? It didn't work for Snow White. You know? And he's not going to. And I sent him an email to follow up because we have Inter Miami coming up.
Right.
David Beckham played for LA Galaxy.
Right.
I mean, I connected so many dots for this guy. Never heard from him again. He will sit there and sell digital media crap probably for the rest of his life. So what do you do when people read your book, the legacy code? What can you give people a takeaway that they'll get, that they won't do what that guy did and not bring their gift to the world?
That what you just said, and don't bring their gift to the world. I think that's a premise that I base kind of the way what I feel is one of the most valuable things. I think one of the things that gets lost on people is that I truly believe we each have a gift that by not sharing it, we're doing the world and ourselves a disservice. And some people belittle the gift and they don't see what it is because it sometimes it's not tangible. Like, there's some people that are mathematically gifted, and you're like, oh, great. I mean, this guy is like brilliant. But other ones are more soft skills.
Soft skills.
Right? So a soft skill is the EQ, the emotional, that emotional connection that you can't really teach, versus like a hard skill, which is the adding, subtracting, the skill that most people think about. And I think very often the people who have these soft skills tend to think, well, I'm not good at anything.
True.
Right? But what you forget is that what you do is the bridge that helps those people that do things connect with the other people.
And what's that role of that person? What would you call that? Because they're in a job, like you said.
Yeah, I mean, like, and I think you'd also be doing yourself a disservice by saying, you know, you have to only do what you're passionate about. Because, yes, passion is all, like, and depending on the type of person you are, right? Like, I'm a person that believes in passion. I love it. I love that connection to that stoking the fire. But that's not how everyone operates. So speaking that language to everyone is not really gonna get them there. Like, it's not gonna excite them the way like you get excited and the way I get excited. We're excitable people, right? Let me give you the context, right? So my wife is not. She is an amazing teacher. She's an awesome woman, but she's an amazing teacher. She's an amazing speaker. But if I tell her, oh, isn't this exciting? She's like, no. Like, exciting is not the word that she uses. But, oh, this can lead to growth. That excites her. Not,
okay.
I'm going to use the word excites. That appeals to her. Whereas if I say to you, hey,
good point.
This I have this adventure that would be really exciting, you'd be like, tell me about it. If I said that to my wife, she's like, no, I don't want to do that. If I tell her, oh, if we're going to go on this trip, that we're going to learn X, Y, and Z, and these things are going to be put in place, like, I have to present it very different. So I think the way we communicate, again, goes back to a lot of it. You have your intention of what it is you're trying to convey, but communicating it properly is the job of the messenger. It's not the job of the receiver. Like, people are like, oh, they just didn't understand me.
It's like a comic complaining the audience sucked. It's like, no, you just didn't deliver your jokes.
Look, but here's the thing, because you can't, like, this is the way I view life, right? I view life that, let's deal with the things that you have control over, right? I can't control the audience. I don't know who's going to show up in my audience. But I can't control me. I can prepare myself. And so to me, if somebody says, I don't understand what you're saying, or completely misinterprets it, I don't say, oh, that person's an idiot.
Yeah.
I say, how could I have expressed that different? Because what that does is now it puts the control back in your hands and says, okay, wait, I can change this. I can better this. And that's important to me, at least. I feel like I'd rather come from a place where I have a possibility of control and I feel empowered that I can do something, versus hopeless and say, oh, that's not my fault. I can't do anything about it. Those are the kinds of things. And there's certain areas in my life, you brought it up earlier about politics. People ask me, why don't you get involved? I said, like, if I'm really honest, it doesn't appeal to me. It feels like a lot of energy being wasted on something I don't understand, don't like, and then at the end of the day, so I said this, and this. What did I achieve with that? I don't feel like it moves the needle in any way.
I got you. It's a lot of spin.
It's a lot of spin, and there's not a lot of people actually engaging in dialogue. It's more about, I'm right, you're wrong, I'm right. That's not how you communicate with anybody.
Yeah.
So if that's it, that's not really communication.
It's a waste of energy, like you said.
Yeah, it's a waste of energy. So I choose not to really go down that path. It's not a thing that I enjoy. So I'm gonna do the things that I feel
like.
Let's
talk
I
about
have
what
control.
you are gonna do.
Right.
We're at the top of the hour here.
Yeah.
So the legacy code. Where can we? Who's that for? Your ideal listener and reader.
Ideally, I wrote it for me. right?
Okay.
So, in all honesty, I wrote it for me. It's the book that I wish I had.
Okay.
Kind of as a married man. So I wrote it specifically for a married man who's an entrepreneur, who has kids, and actually wants to show up in their marriage more powerfully, in their health, in their business, and create an impact in this world that excites them. Like, that was the cornerstone. But the principles there work for men that are divorced, men that are single, women that are married, women that are single, women that are divorced. Like, it works for everyone, because it's not like the book is not coming from a pedestal that says, oh, this is right, this is wrong. No, this is a book about discovery. It walks you through a journey that you are the author of, not I am. I'm just kind of pointing the way. Hey,
and you share personal stories in it,
right? Yeah, look, there's a reason why we've been here talking, and why story has always been the shortest point between 2 points, so to speak, because it's something that we get. So when I am sharing a principle, I can share the principle, and normally that would be my go-to, is like, oh, just X, Y, and Z. But if I tell you a story about my father and I, and you're like, oh, I get it. Now it has emotion. Now it has flesh. Now it's real. It's a movie that's been played that illustrates this. Oh, that's like a movie in my life.
Relatable.
Right.
I gotcha. So where can people find this book? Is it online? Is it like a PDF?
Sure. No, it's you can go to legacycodebook.com.
Legacycodebook.com.
Yeah. And you can go directly there. You can go to my hub site, which is my name, armandocruz.com.
No, it's C-R-U-Z.
C-R-U-Z, not like Tom Cruise, but like Cruz, like
give
Celia.
You intro music.
Yeah, like Celia Cruz, if that makes any better.
Armando
if you're
Cruz
we are in Miami, right? So
yeah.
At this point, hopefully somebody knows who Celia Cruz is, so like that.
All right, armandocruz.com, and the legacy book.
Legacy Codebook.
Legacycodebook.com.
Right.
And a lot of people that are listening want to work with you, so they can have the transformations that I went through to really bring out the firepower. So where can they contact you if they want to work with you directly? Because I understand you still do private coaching.
Yes, armandocruz.com would be the best place.
Well, from me personally, I'm very grateful that you came on the show. You made a huge impact in my life. I get to wear leather pants now, as you can see. It was what it was all about. He's like, bro, I'm telling you, leather pants.
Leather pants all the way.
That's what's missing in your life. So I want to thank our guest, author, and legacy coach of the Legacy Code, who lives at Legacy Drive in Legacy, Michigan, Armando Cruz. You can visit him at armandocruz.com and legacycodebook.com. Thank you for coming.
My pleasure.
Would you like to say anything else, like a message to our audience, like to leave them with something?
Sure.
And I'll give you applause as you leave.
Look, at the end of the day, if you are purposeful about creating the life that you want, you can actually create the life that you want. It's not going to happen by mistake.
All right. Well, thank you very much. You heard it here first on the Revelator, 94.5 FM Blink Radio. Have a wonderful day. Nice job, man.
Cool.